Hello YouTube and welcome to another virtualization tutorial. So in this video I'm going to show you how to configure replication in Windows Server. So are you ready? Let's get started. So first thing first, what is replication actually? So actually replication is the process of creating a replica of a virtual machine, or actually standby copy of a running virtual machine, but this copy will be actually not running, so the state will be turned off. So we have actually to start it or to run it whenever the original virtual machine actually has problem or has stopped. Okay, so let me show you that in example here. So here, as you can see, I'm using here Hyper-V Manager. So I have here two hosts. Okay, I have Hyper-V01 and Hyper-V02. Okay, but inside Hyper-V01 we have running virtual machine. So here it's actually just a Windows 7 machine. Okay, so it's running. So as you can see here, I'm connected to this Windows 7 machine and it has some data. For example, here I had just put a text file that contains some data. Check me. Okay, so this is not important now. So the most important thing here to note is we will create our replica in another host, for example in Hyper-V02. Okay, but first of all, let me take a look at some options here for this virtual machine. So this virtual machine here is running. Okay, and here at the bottom you can see a summary. It was created on this date. Okay, clustered, no, we'll see clustering in other videos. Okay, we have some memory here, we have some network, and also we have an important tab called replication. So right now you can see that the replication mode is not enabled. Okay, the state also is not enabled. Okay, we have no primary server and no replica server. Okay, so actually here we'll be using Hyper-V01 as our primary server and Hyper-V02 as our replica server. Okay, and the data would be synchronized between this running Windows 7 machine and the other one which will be created as a replica in Hyper-V02. So let's do this process and see that live. Okay, so in order to create a replica for this virtual machine, it's pretty simple. All you have to do is to right click on this virtual machine here, and you see here just at the bottom you have the option to enable replication. Okay, so let's click on it and see what we get. So let's enable this replication, and here we go. We have a wizard enable replication for our virtual machine here. Okay, so this wizard helps you to configure replication for a virtual machine. Okay, so before you proceed, ensure that you have configured a server to allow a replication. So this is actually the server, replica server that we'll be using is Hyper-V02. But let's just click next and see what we get. So here it's asking me for our replica server. So as I told you, I'll be using this other host Hyper-V02 as our replica server. So all we have to do is to enter its name here, host name. It's Hyper-V02 as you can see here, or you can browse and input its host name here. Okay, so let's hit next. So here we have a message. The specified replica server is not configured to receive replication from the server. Okay, so we have actually to enable replication on this Hyper-V02 in order to receive replication from Hyper-V01, and here we have a shortcut to do that. So let's click on this configure server. Okay, so here you can see the settings, but this time is for 02, not for 01. Okay, we launched our button from 01, and here we have the Hyper-V setting for 02. Okay, and directly it goes to this menu here, replication configuration. So all we have to do is to enable this computer as a replica server. So we have to check this box here. Okay, here we go. And here we have some options. We can use Kerberos and just to HTTP. Okay, so data is sent over the network will be not encrypted. But we can use also another option. Data in this case will be encrypted, but we need a certificate. As we don't have actually a certificate, we can use just this option here, number 1, use Kerberos HTTP. Okay, and of course specify the port will be 80. Okay, and here also we have to allow replication for authentication server or authorization and storage. Okay, we can actually allow replication from specific servers. Okay, so we are in 02, we want to allow just replication from 01, so we can just add it here. Let's add it, and here we have to actually specify the primary server, which in this case is 01. So let's input its name, Hyper-V 01, and the domain name is aminos.local. Okay, here we can specify the default location to store the replica server or the replica files. You can leave it as the default, or you can just put the replica in specific folder. Here I have to input a dot, so make sure to enter the full host name of your primary server and not to commit any error. Okay, so here we go. I guess it's okay now. Here we have to specify the trust group. Here you can name it whatever you want, so let's call it just a replica group, for example replica G. Okay, doesn't matter. Here we go, and you can see now this replica server, which is Hyper-V 02, will be receiving replication data just from this server. So it's another security that you can allow. Okay, and we hit enter, or actually we apply, and here there is an important message. Here we have to configure the firewall to allow inbound traffic. Okay, so ensure that the inbound TCP exception for port 80 is enabled in the firewall. Okay, so here will be actually these two servers are core servers, but we'll be using just actually PowerShell in order to configure this rule that will allow inbound traffic in the port TCP, in the port 80 of TCP. So I will show you how we can do that. Okay, so let's just click OK and OK, and we hit next. Here we go. Here we have actually some summary here. So this is our replica server, which is 02, as I mentioned. We're using port 80. Okay, and we're using also Kerberos authentication HTTP, and also an important checkbox, compressed data that is transmitted over the network. It's also good. Next, here this is the replication virtual hard disk, so I will just keep it as default. Next, here the frequency at which changes will be sent to the replica server. So as I told you, actually we'll be creating standby virtual machine on this replica server, and here you can specify the frequency in which the actually standby virtual machine will receive data from Hyper-V 02 or actually 01. Okay, so the running machine will be in 01, but the standby machine or replica will be in Hyper-V 02, and here we specify the amount or the frequency at which changes will be sent to a replica server. So here I will just keep with the default, but of course you can change it if you have some very sensitive data that is changing every every 5 minutes. So I will choose here 5 minutes, and I will go next. Here maintain only the latest recovery point, so I will keep the default here. Here you can see that send initial copy of the over the network, because the first replica actually will copy the entire virtual machine to the replica server, which in this case is Hyper-V02. Okay, so I will just choose this first option, will send or will copy the full actually virtual machine, which as you can see here it's about 6.16 gigabytes over the network, but you can also send it over external media if you want. So I will stick with the default. Here we can schedule the initial replication to start in specific time, but here I will be run it live. Next. So now we have everything we need in order to begin the replica process. But as I told you, there is an important step that we didn't actually do, is actually to configure the firewall in Hyper-V02 to allow inbound traffic. So I will show you how you can do that using PowerShell. Okay, so let's go now to Hyper-V02 and go to the actually PowerShell and configure this rule. Okay, so now we are in Hyper-V02. As you can see here, we go to the command prompt here, the other window, and we type PowerShell in order to get the PowerShell prompt. Here we go, we are now in PowerShell, so we can input the rule. Okay, so let's input this rule. So the rule is, or actually the command that will allow us to set up or to enable this rule is enable net firewall rule. Okay, rule, and the display name for this rule, display name will be between quotes. Okay, here we go, and make sure to respect the spaces and do not make any mistake in the typo. So the display name is Hyper-V, okay, replica. Okay, HTTP, because we are using HTTP, listener, and between parentheses TCP N. So this is the display name for this rule to enable inbound traffic corresponding to the replica actually data. Okay, so make sure that everything is okay. Now display name, okay, and we hit enter. Okay, and we wait for the rule to be actually set up. We have no error, which means everything is okay. So the rule is enabled, so we can now proceed with our replica process. Okay, now we can hit finally the finish button in order to begin the process. Okay, so let's hit this finish button and see what we get. So you can see now the process is actually beginning. So we are in Hyper-V01, and here in the state view you can see that sending initial replica. So as I told you, we have the option to send this initial replica via an external media, but we choose to send it over the network. That's why it's beginning here. Okay, and notice now in our replica tab, we have here some info. We have our replication mode is primary, we have our primary server, we have our replica server. Okay, so we have some data that has been filled in this tab. Okay, and here you can see in Hyper-V02 we have our standby actually virtual machine. So the state is off, it's not running, but it's receiving changes. So you can see here the percentage of the received data. Okay, so as I told you, the replication is actually the process of creating this virtual machine, but the state will be just off. And when we have a problem in this original actually virtual machine, we can just switch to this one, which will contain all the data in the original virtual machine, and we can actually change its state from off to running, and it will be the actual actually running machine or virtual machine. Okay, so we'll wait here for the process to finish in order to show you other things that we have done. Okay, so as you can see now, the process has finished. We have nothing in the status here. Okay, so we can actually right click on this virtual machine, and here you will notice we have another menu, replication, and one of the important things that you can do is to view replication health. Okay, so here you will get some valuable information. You can check the health of the replication. So here it's normal. We have also the current primary server. So the primary server is the server where our running virtual machine is actually in. So we are in 01. Okay, and we have here the replica server, which is 02. Okay, and here we have some info about some data about the average size. Okay, and some actually pending replication, last synchronized. You can see here the last synchronized data, at which time it will happen actually. Okay, so now if we go to our replica server, we will find actually our standby virtual machine, and of course the state is off. Okay, so now let's simulate that something happened in this original virtual machine. So let's, for example, turn it off or stop it. So let's turn it off. Here we go. So it's now off. We can actually go to our replica server and right click on this virtual machine, and you see here replication. If we want this machine to be the final one that will be running, all we have to do is to click here on Failover. Okay, so let's click on the Failover here. So this machine actually will be the one that is running. Okay, so we can just check Failover. Here we go. Okay, so you can see now the state is running actually. Okay, so let's connect to it. But remember, all the settings that was actually in this original virtual machine are actually now in this Hyper-V server 2. So let's connect to it. So as you can see, we get back our virtual machine here. So it's replica actually, and we get our data. So this is our file with the same data. So remember, we have actually configured our replica to send changes from the original one to the replica every 5 minutes. So if any changes that happens in the original virtual machine will be actually replicated every 5 minutes to our replica server, and our replica virtual machine has everything that was in the original one. For example, we can check the IP address. You will notice it hasn't changed. So this is the one that was configured in Hyper-V 01. So actually this is the process that allows you to replicate a virtual machine from one server to another. Okay, so this is very useful in case of disaster recovery. So if something happened to your original virtual machine, you can just switch back to other server and make the standby virtual machine as running one, and it will contain all the data that has been synchronized every 5 minutes from the original one. Okay, so that was just a brief video to show you the process of replication in Hyper-V server. Okay, as always, I hope it has been informative for you, and I want to thank you for viewing. Bye bye.